Hi, Stamper fans. Welcome to another Make It Monday. I'm Nan Gerlitz, independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Bloomington, Illinois. And I am here live on my Facebook page every Monday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. So welcome, welcome. Glad to have you here. Wow, lost my train of thought. It's Monday, guys. There's a danger in doing these things on Mondays, I think. Anyway, if you are watching the replay, thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad that you have taken some time to spend with me, and I hope you learned something new today. If you're here live, please go ahead and drop a comment in the comments so I can see who's here. If you're watching the replay, do that too. I always love to see who comes by. And if you ever have any questions, I always check the comments on all of these. So if you want to leave a question for anything we covered here, you can do that in the comments, or you can always send me a private message. All righty. Tonight, I have for you our bright pink and green. It just reminded me of the 80s, back in the preppy era, where pink and lime green were the ultimate colors. So, but I wanted something cheery because it's been very dreary here in central Illinois. So that's why I opted for pinks and greens and very brights. So, but I'm going to show you how to make this card, and part of it is this stained glass technique that is on vellum cardstock. So it's a little hard to tell probably from just videos and photographs. I'll be showing you a little bit more how to go about it, so that'll help. All right, let's switch the view. Okay, it feels like a lot longer than a week since I've seen all of you, so apologize. I'm a little discombobulated tonight. So, all right. So we have this here, and I also have 3 alternatives of this same card, but using different coloring techniques. So if you're wanting to get started in coloring, maybe I can give you some idea of what the different methods look like, and that might help you decide which products you need to add to your craft stash. So, hi, Joan. Good morning, good evening. I love that I have Australians on my live feed. It's so fun. And I'm so sad that I never get to join you guys live on your feeds because I'm asleep at that time. So, but what we have here is, like I said, it's called the stained glass technique. And it's this layer of vellum, if you can see, is very see-through. And so we're going to be teaching you that tonight if you don't already know that. As always, I have linked a full supply list, including cardstock measurements, in the video description, so you can click on that supply list link and get all of the order numbers and all that kind of stuff for everything right there. And you can also get all the cardstock measurements, so you don't have to write anything down while we're chatting and everything here. You can just enjoy and go back and click that. As always, everything I show you here can be purchased from me in my Stampin' Up! Store by clicking on that link, and that is also, I believe, yes, in the comments and the video description. I have to remember what I'm doing. Hello, Penny. We just started, so you haven't missed a thing. Glad to have you here. Okay, so starting off tonight is we are starting with our Decorative Borders stamp set. This is a brand new stamp set in the latest mini catalog. This catalog. So if you don't have one of these catalogs and you're in the US and you don't work with a demonstrator, shoot me a message. I would love to get one in the mail to you so that you can flip through it and take it to bed and cuddle up, and that's what I love to do. So it is one of our new stamp sets, and it's lovely to color with, but I'm featuring it all this week on my Facebook page here, and there's some that are not colored necessarily. So you will see that you don't have to go all out on this stamp set. Hi, Teresa. Thanks for joining us. I will also be using the Forever Fern stamp set because I just loved that little phrase, and I love this font so much. This is such a gorgeous stamp set. So those 2 today. The other alternatives I'll be showing you at the end of the video use different sentiments, so kind of giving you some different ideas. We will be using 2 ink pads tonight, our Stays On ink pad. So I'll be talking more about that as we're stamping with it, because that's a definite specialty pad. And then our Polished Pink classic ink pad. to match our cardstock, because you know we're all about coordination at Stampin' Up. It's my favorite thing. The other inks we'll be using is I'll be using blender pens for this version of the card tonight. So our polished pink and our granny apple green to match our cardstock. Speaking of cardstock, we're starting out with a base of polished pink, which is 8.5 by 5.5 inches, scored at 4.25 inches. Give that a good burnish with my bone folder. Now, every time I use my bone folder now, it reminds me of my grandboy, because he likes to tell people, Grandma likes to do both sides, because that's what I told him, and he's a good listener. So we actually had them overnight on the weekend and did no stamping this time, but lots of coloring and reading books and good stuff. So it was a fun weekend with them. Okay, then we have a piece of granny apple green, and this is 5.5 by 4.25. It is the same size as our card front. So I will teach you how we did that cool little fold. Then we have for our inside a piece of basic white that's 5.25 by 4. We have a couple more pieces of basic white. I've got a little scrap here. This one's about 2.5 inches square. And then we have our scrap for the floral image, and this is 4 inches by 2 inches. We have a piece of vellum cardstock that is also 4 inches by 2 inches. And a piece of our basic black that's about 2.5 or so. That's for another one of the circles. On the supply list, I've given you a few options. So when we get to adhering the vellum, I'll go over those adhesives. I put them all on the supply list. You can kind of decide which thing you like the best and then go from there if you need to add those to your craft stash. Okay. We will also be using the big Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine tonight, because we will be embossing our green letter layer with that Fern 3D folder. I love this. So pretty. Love it with all the florals. We're also going to be using the layering circles, because I can't believe these things are not worn out at our house yet. We've used them so much. And then we will be embellishing with our pastel adhesive back sequins. This is actually a pack of sequins that I got free at the event I went to in November at Onstage in Indianapolis. So yay, free stuff, right? Everybody loves free stuff. So, and I'm getting a heck of a lot of use out of these, as you can tell, because I think I've used them like 3 weeks in a row now. And then dimensionals, of course. All right, I think that's about it. Another thing that's on that list is our Stays-On cleaner, and I'll be talking about this as well as we get to stamping. Okay, let's get to it. All right, so as always, let's just get that inside right out of the way, right? So here's a little tip that I've got for you, actually. I'm going to move my grid paper down so you can see. So actually, you probably can't read it from there, but on this side of the grid paper, it goes from 0 to 16 inches. And on this side, it goes from 0 to 10 inches. On this long side, the 0 is in the middle, and it goes out to 8 inches on each side. And on this side, the 0 is in the middle, and it goes to 5 inches on each side. And I love that little feature. So if you don't have our grid paper yet, this might just change your mind on why you might need it. So what I'm going to do, this is a 4-inch wide piece of cardstock I've got. So I'm going to put each of those edges at the 2-inch mark. So I know that 0 is dead center in the middle, okay? We are going to grab our stamp set, and we've got this cute little curly Q flower. I'm going to pop that on a block, and then I need my ink pad. There it is. I've got a small space here, guys, and I can still manage to lose something right in front of my nose. So I'm just going to stamp this in our polished pink. So we're going to line that up with the grid paper. I know it's straight. And then I'm just going to line that So I'll get that close so you can see it. I'm going to line the tip of that flower up with the 0. And then I know that it's centered. And then I'm going to turn this around and do that exact same thing and line the tip of that flower up with the 0. And now those are centered top and bottom. And I didn't have to like make tick marks with a pencil or anything like that. I love that 0 center thing, and I forget about it sometimes. So it's a nice little tip to give all of you tonight too, in case you didn't realize that that was there. And that is why it's there. And the other nice thing about that is if you have to, like if you're trying to score your cardstock or cut it or something, or stamp, things a certain distance apart, but you want to start in the middle, it's always nice to know where that center is. And then you've got your grid lines to follow along as well. Okay, so there is our middle, our inside. We'll go ahead and attach that. Middle of our Stampin' Seal on each corner. We're going to talk quite a bit about adhesives tonight. I probably should have done my other thing first, but it's okay. You'll understand that in a second. All right, I left my trimmer over here, so let me grab it. It is always out on my craft table. Let's close this ink pad because we don't want to have another ink catastrophe like last week when I dropped the Night of Navy. Yes, Teresa, it's like the grid paper is really nice because like I sometimes design cards on it. I will, I'll actually draw out a 5.5 by 4.25 inch thing, and then I'll say, okay, where do I want things? And so I can kind of make sketches on it. You can measure your ribbon with it. You can do your score lines with it, all sorts of nice things. But that 0 point center is so nice to have, for sure. Okay, so how we are going to do this cool little thing. Now I could have just sliced this in half and diagonally and done it, but I kind of wanted a little extra dimension. So after I've scored this in half, right, I'm going to line the top of that score line up there with the little cutting trough. And I'm going to line the bottom corner up with it as well. And I'm actually going to slice that triangle right off the top of our card. Okay, well, that looks kind of cool too. So, and that will make a nice little other card sometime. So that is how we did the cool little half and half card front that I've got going on. Oops. Okay, now we need to, I only want to get my embossing machine out once. So we are going to do a little stamping first. Let us stamp our greeting on here. And I don't know about all of you, so if you have a scanner or if you have access to a copy machine or anything, you can actually kind of scan these and then have a notebook full of all of your stamp sets. So if you want to flip through them, or some people actually do, I believe it's called Evernote or Airtable, a couple of database kind of apps that you can actually type in all of your sentiments and then you can search for them. So if you're looking for all of your happy birthdays, or you're looking for all the ones that say friend or sympathy, you can have that kind of there. So you can do it old school paper, or you can do it new techie, any way you want. I don't have any of those yet because I don't actually keep too many stamp sets on hand. The one thing I will say is I do need to figure out how to organize my paper pumpkin stamp sets better. So I do have all of those. And because they're seasonal a lot of times, it's really nice to pull out like all the Christmas greetings or the Valentine's Day greetings or all of that kind of stuff. So I need to figure that one out. All right. Okay, that's all for my pink pad. let us do some die cutting and embossing, and then we will do the cool vellum trick. Okay. Get that big boss in here. Hello, big boss. We pulled out a new cutting plate because our old one was looking really, really used. So we decided it was time to switch. Layering circles. And I always like to double check what my sample had on it so I can figure out the sizes. Because I don't want to guess wrong while I'm on camera. Okay, so this is one of the things I always like to stamp before I die cut in most cases, because then I can center it right where I want it. Especially if you're using a red rubber stamp, because you can't really see through those. So it's easier to do this die cutting after. If you're using a photopolymer stamp, you can see through that and it's a little easier to line up. So either way you want to do that, right? All right, then we just need a slightly bigger circle for the... So here you might say, well, that paper's not big enough, but the cut lines are actually just inside. This is how stingy I am, you guys. Literally picked out a piece of cardstock that's just barely big enough. So because of that, I am going to stick that guy down so it doesn't move. Although, you know what? Half of this is hiding anyway. So let's just make sure that one side for sure cuts. I didn't even plan that. That's a bonus tip for you guys tonight. Part of your die cut is hiding. Who cares what the other part looks like, right? So I have a little flat edge on that, but it's okay because it's going to be hidden. Nobody will know except all of you, of course. All right. And now we need to emboss. And this is a 3D folder, which means it's a little thicker. So we need our regular plate, and we need our gray specialty plate. And of course, our embossing folder. And this is actually the reason we needed to use the big boss tonight, because this particular folder will not go through the mini. The layering circles will go through the mini all day long. And the nice part about our embossing, our die cut and embossing machines, is that you get all of these plates with your machine. So you get your platforms, you get your specialty plates, you get your shims and two cutting plates all with your machine. So you just need to purchase your whatever dies or embossing folders you want and you're ready to go. Okay. All right, so all of our die cutting's done, all of our embossing is done. Let's go ahead and adhere this. So I think, did I cut this? I did not. I'm actually going to trim this just a little bit. I forgot about that. I'm going to take like 1/8 of an inch off of the width of this because it's actually going to like butt up to the score line here, and so it's going to stick out just a tad. So put adhesive on this layer, and I'm just going to go around every edge because I want to make sure it is adhered well, because it's going to be opened and shut, right? There's people looking at it. So you want to make sure it stays stuck. So now I'm just going to lay the green one on top of the back, and then I'll just close the card. And now we have our front. And the cool part is then your inside looks all cool and embossed too. Yes. whatever dies and embossing folders you want is indeed a very dangerous statement. I think that's why we're all here, right? We're all it's like a 12-step program. Don't ever be more than 12 steps away from your catalog. Okay. Let's see. All right, so now we have our vellum layer. So this is why we're using the StazOn ink tonight. The StazOn is a solvent pad. And so normally we don't use it with blends because blends are an alcohol-based, StazOn's an alcohol-based. Sames don't go together, right? Opposites go together. But this is why we're using this. The stained glass technique is where you stamp on the front and you color on the back. So that is what we're going to do. So I will tell you, for those of you that are not familiar with StazOn, when you open it up, it's got this extra little plastic layer on it. And that is because it dries out pretty quickly. So that helps it stay moist. So if you don't use your StazOn a lot, you may need to re-ink it whenever you're going to use it. So you'll kind of know. It'll be very obvious. But I usually, if you're not using it all the time and you don't know when it's getting dry, then I would definitely test it out on like your grid paper or something first to see if you need to re-ink it. So we're going to use this cool flower sprig. You can see that it's all stained already and kind of dingy looking. It does not matter. It's fine. Pick it up with our block, and then I'm going to take the StazOn to it. And because this is not a foam pad, it's one of your old kind of felt pads, I actually do a twist, and then tap. And that helps distribute the ink a little better. On our regular Stampin' pads, those are foam pads now. You just need to do a light tap, and that's it. But on the felt pads, you do need to do a little twist, and then a tap. Okay. So we're going to take this, and I love this is a photopolymer stamp set, so I can see exactly where I'm going with this. Give it about a 5 count. You know, say, "Man is wonderful, man is wonderful, man is wonderful." And then you should be good. And StazOn is also sticky. Oh, apparently, I probably should have inked that up. So we're going to go with this anyway. Oh, but here's where you need the StazOn cleaner. So StazOn, because it is an alcohol-based ink, is not really great for your stamps, right? So you need the StazOn cleaner, and it has like kind of a scrubby, spongy kind of thing on the top. So you literally just turn it over and just take it to your stamp. And it gets all that ink all wet and cleaned, right? And then with this one, because it is an alcohol ink, I like to pull out my old Stampin' Scrub instead of my chamois. The Stampin' Scrub has a wet side and a dry side, so you just spray either Stampin' Mist or water on this wet side. I'm just going to use my spritzer full of water. And I'm going to spritz right on that stamp. Get all that stuff going. And then I will rub it all over the wet side and then rub it all over the dry side. We always used to tease that this is the cheapest washer and dryer you'll ever buy. So, but the nice thing about this Stampin' Scrub is it's got like bristles. So it gets all up in the little nooks and crannies of your stamps. So for something like with StazOn, where it's going to be a little, iffy on your stamps, if you leave it on there, I want to make sure it gets really good and cleaned in all the crevices. The other thing about the Stampin' Scrub is you'll notice these little corner cutouts. This one has, let me see if I can get that in camera. This one has little raindrops on it, so it'll tell you that's the wet side. And this one has a little sun in it, and that'll tell you that's the dry side. You can also label those. But you can also pop these out. There's just little tabs holding them in, and then you can scrub them under your sink, little like dishwashing soap or something like that. So if they get gunky, you just go ahead and rinse them out just like your chamois, and they'll be good as new. All righty. Okay, so we're going to use this guy anyway, even though he didn't stamp really complete. So clearly I probably should have either twisted that a little bit more, tapped it a little more, or I should have re-inked my StazOn. I don't use it very often, so it does get kind of dry. Yes, I do love my Stampin' Scrub, and I do use it sometimes. Not a whole lot, but especially we don't have a sink down here in the studio, so to rinse out our chamois and stuff, you know, you got to go upstairs. And when I'm in the middle of a project, I don't want to run and do that. So I'm lazy. So, so yeah, it's really nice to just pull the Stampin' Scrub out of the drawer and give it a spritz. Okay, so I stamped on this side. We're going to turn it over because if I were to color with the Stampin' Blends on this side, it would blur that ink that stays on. So I turn it over, and I'm just going to fill in these leaves and flowers and whatnot on the back. And this is kind of why they call it stained glass, because it looks like you filled it in just like a stained glass window. It looks really cool if you emboss, like you heat emboss that with like a black heat emboss powder, and then flip it over and do the coloring, because then it has that raised look like leaded glass, or maybe even a silver embossing powder. So there's several different ways you can do it. I think, yeah, I'm using the light. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to use the dark. So with my sample card as well, let me get that in frame again. I went over these leaves and flowers 2 or 3 times because the vellum kind of softens the color. So it's going to look a little less vibrant on the front. So you just want to keep experimenting and go over it however many times you want until you get the color you want. That's another reason we back it with white cardstock, because that makes that color pop as well. So if I would put this against just the regular cardstock or just left it on its own, you would get a lot of washed out color. Another thing, because I want this to look like stained glass, is I want to stay within the lines. So I don't want to have any kind of overage. I don't want it to look like watercolor, which means I'm laying down less ink from the Stampin' Blends than I would have if I was coloring it otherwise. And I will show you one of my alternative examples has them just stamped on white and done in Stampin' Blends. So there we have it. And it, like I said, it looks kind of pale, right? But when you pop it against the white, then the colors pop more. So that's one of the reasons. I also wanted to show you paler colors. So this is mint macaron and pale papaya. And I went over these probably 3 or 4 times on the back. So you can see how much lighter that is. So this technique works really well with very bright, vibrant colors instead of the more muted or softer, subtler colors. Okay? So many comments. You guys are great. Oh, good, Teresa. I hope you'll come back and share what you made with it, because I would love to see your creations. Yeah, Betty, I know you like those vibrant colors, don't you? Okay, so now the big question when you're working with vellum, if you never have before, this will be a little bit of a lesson for you, is vellum is not very forgiving when you're trying to put adhesive on the back. So normally, right, like if you're just adhering cardstock, you just throw whatever adhesive you want on the back and lay it down, right? But vellum is see-through. So you're going to see your adhesive through it. So I have a little scrap piece over here. So if you were to just put some Stampin' Seal on the back and put it down, I'm not sure if you can really tell there, but you can see that adhesive line through there. It's not too bad. If you were to use glue dots, same kind of thing. So let's just put a glue dot down here. It doesn't even want to stick to the vellum. It knows it's not supposed to be there. put a glue dot, and you can definitely see that glue dot. Oh, I can. I can't seem to show it to you on camera. There it is. So that's the tricky part with vellum. So there's a couple of different ways. The way I did it on this sample card was I took our liquid adhesive and I put a little bit on our silicone mat, because once it's dry, you can just rinse it off or rub it off. And then I just took a sponge dauber and daubed it into the liquid adhesive, and then just kind of daubed all over the back of my vellum. Now, I will say I was kind of heavy-handed when I first hit it, and you can't really see it on camera, I imagine, but I can see that adhesive a little bit through the back. It doesn't fuss me too much. I'll still be happy to send that to somebody. But, so that's one way. You could also use like a makeup sponge or something like that to spread that adhesive around. The way I'm going to do it tonight, and we're just giving this a try, is I'm going to use one of our adhesive sheets that I normally use when I'm die cutting. So this is just going to make this entire thing a big sticker. Oops, which side? This side. So I will lay this down on here. Take that little edge off. So now that adhesive should be all over the back. And I will take the liner off. Now I've basically just got a big sticker. We're going to see how this looks, because I've never tried this before, so you guys are kind of my guinea pigs. Well, and that worked really well. I cannot see any trace of the adhesive behind there because it's on the whole thing. So that's perfect. So there's a couple of different tricks for you. Now, I will tell you also, if you were making this and you thought, okay, well, I'm going to put, for example, I know I'm going to put this is going to be covered by the circle. So you can put a little adhesive right there because it's going to be covered. And then I could have put sequins maybe in each of those corners, and I could have put a glue dot behind the vellum on those corners and covered those glue dots with sequins. So there's ways to hide the adhesive. You just need to be strategic when you're working with vellum. All righty. So now we will go ahead and attach our greeting. For this, because I wanted to sandwich it between the white and the black, I'm just put a little bit of liquid glue on that side. I'll pop that down. And then a little circle of liquid glue around there. And remember, I cut that, so it cut it off. I'm just going to hide that behind. So we'll put that down, and layer that right on there. Bammo. Where did I put my dimensionals? Anybody see where I put those down? You guys are never paying attention. Seriously, I have them here. I showed them to you guys. Wait, I know. I found them. I put them right back where they were to start with. Okay, so this whole thing is going to go up on dimensionals. So one in each corner. And then I don't want the middle to sag, and I want to make sure that that circle is up. So we're going to put one there, and one there. Take off our backings. And then you just decide about where you want that on the card. And now we just need our sequins. You guys, I'm loving these sequins. They're going to show up on another card this week, just so you know. So you're all, prepared for it. Right? Such a good use for the adhesive sheet. I'm absolutely loving that. Okay, so we are using the pink ones tonight. I don't even remember which particular pink this is supposed to be, but it went well with my card. So let's pop a large one down here, and then a couple of smalls. One down here, and one on our greeting. Bam, beautiful. All right, I will say that I like my sample better because I stamped and colored a lot better on the one that I took my time with. Normally, I'm pretty good live, aren't I, guys? But tonight, ooh, that coloring did not go as I expected. So that is something, I think we talked about this last week, that whenever you order an ink pad, no matter what kind of ink pad it is, so even if it stays on, always order the refill with it. That way you're prepared. I do have a stays on refill. I just didn't re-ink it this time. So, well, thank you, Penny. It is softer. It's more of a, I don't know, maybe an impressionistic, right? Instead of being so bold and in your face. So just a little different look. All right, now I did promise you other samples, and I have them. Okay, so there's our first one with the vellum. And here is one that is straight Stampin' Blends on white cardstock, so no vellum involved. So you can see that I've used, hopefully you can see, I've used some shading in here, and it's just very vibrant right there. I only went over these once. I went over these on the back like probably 3 or 4 times to get the color that vibrant. So that's Stampin' Blends straight on cardstock. And with that, you would use that Memento black ink, the Tuxedo Black. Next, I've used our watercolor pencils, this one. Now, I did not have a polished pink watercolor pencils, but I did have Flirty Flamingo, so I went with that. So this is our watercolor pencils. And I also used the blender pens to blend those a little bit. So thank you, Joan. So glad you were here. So we did have Granny Apple Green in this. This is the assortment number 2 of the watercolor pencils. We have 2 different packs of them. So we have the first assortment that I think has a couple of more pencils, and then we have this one. So just depending on what colors you like. But this is a very inexpensive way to get started on coloring. The nice thing about the pencils is you can just color them in and leave the pencil lines, so it has that very cool pencil, colored pencil look. Or you can use our blender pens to soften that and just make them all nice and smooth. The blender pens are actually clear. They're like a glycerin marker. These are, the tips are stained, but they're fine. When you use them, you just go ahead and blend in. And then when you're done with that color, you color on your scrap paper until it's clear, and then you're ready to go to the next color. So another inexpensive product. So if you're just starting coloring, watercolor pencils and blender pens, or you can use your blender pens with your ink pads. So really good way to get started on coloring if you're just dipping your toe in the water. And the last one I have for you is watercolored ink. So you can see here that this is definitely more watercolory looking, varied shades of everything. And I will say, working with the blends has gotten me more comfortable coloring in general. So all I did with this is I took our water painters and I took the smallest one. You get a tiny one and a medium and then more of a flat brush. And these are cool because you fill the barrels with water. So you don't have to have a cup of water on your table, which just screams disaster to me. They're just kind of preloaded with water. And there's a little sign that says push right there. So you just push and then you've got water coming out. Now I have to figure out how to get rid of that. But all I did was make the image a little wet as I was working on it. And then I took my ink pads, and if you squeeze them, you get a little well of ink right here, and you can see where the water was. So I just dipped that brush in there, and I really just kind of dotted or dropped the ink into the little bits of water that I had on there. I added more ink if I wanted it a little darker, or I left it to just go. So that's one recommendation. If you're going to watercolor, is definitely start with less ink, and then you can always add a little bit more. But it's super simple. This was a super simple one. Literally did not do any brushing. I just kind of dotted, just kind of pounced a little bit with my water painter. So there are your 4 different ways of coloring this beautiful stamp. All right. I will be posting those other cards on the Facebook page tomorrow. So if you want a closer look at them, you can see those tomorrow. And I hope that you've got some tips, especially with working with vellum, because I forget about my vellum, and I have quite a bit of it, but I forget about working with it too. And it's a really cool way. Oh, I did want to tell you, that's right. Let me switch the view again, because I wanted to give you one other tip on how to adhere vellum. If you cut it longer than the cardstock you're doing, you can always take your adhesive to the back of your cardstock and flip it down there. And then the front, it's adhered to it and everything, but no adhesive will show through the front. So if you cut it a little longer and just tuck it under the sides, you can put your adhesive on the back of your cardstock still, and then nothing shows through the front. So just another little tip for you. Always think about how you can hide your adhesive when you're working with vellum. Okay, that's all the tips I have for you now, at least for tonight. So yes, I do want to remind you that Celebration is still going on. Very important. Celebration ends the end of February, and these products are actually also only available while supplies last. So it's possible that some of them might run out before the end of February, especially the more popular ones. So if you wanted anything in here, you want to make sure that you're placing your orders early. So for every $50 or $100 that you order during this time, you can pick out a free product out of the Celebration brochure. Also during Celebration, don't forget our great join offers. So that means if you've ever wanted a discount on your stamping supplies, if you've ever wanted to share this fun hobby with your friends, if you've ever wanted to have a little side hustle or a main business and make a little extra money, you know, some going out money, maybe pay for some lessons for your kids, something like that. We've got it all for you. I support all levels of demonstrators in my in our team. So whether you just want the discount or whether you want to run wild with it, I can help you out. So, and Celebration is always the best time to join because they always have an amazing offer. Now, normally 365 days a year, you pay $99 plus tax, and you get to pick out $125 worth of Stampin' products. It's a great deal all year long. But during Celebration, you pay $99, you get to pick out $175 worth of product. Your choice. So it can be all cardstock. You can get that great embossing machine if you want, and some dies and embossing folders. The sky's the limit, right? Well, actually, $175 is the limit. but you get what I mean. But the cool thing this year is they've given us 2 other options, and that is you can pay $129 for your kit. You still get to pick up the $175 worth, and you get to have one of our mini cut and emboss machines on top of that. That's a $63 machine right there. So you're basically getting that half price. And you can pick out the white one that we sell all the time, or you can pick out this really cool boho blue one that's exclusive to the Celebration offer. So you won't be able to get it after Celebration. So that's my pitch for tonight. If you are interested in joining the team, you can go right to the link in the video description and join the Steampunk Stampers. We'd love to have you. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and send me a message. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. No obligation. And I don't bite. And I'll be happy to just help you out, make your decision. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you about the best deal there is. All right? Okay, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. Until next week, I'm still Nan Gerlitz.